I didn't know what I was looking at, but it knew I was there. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling like they belonged to someone else. The room was quiet to quiet, but my screen blared with a brightness that made every shadow feel alive. Normally, I would have laughed this off, chalked it up to some glitch or an overactive imagination fueled by late night. Creepypasta. Tonight, though, laughter felt impossible. Because what I saw wasn't supposed to exist. It started innocuously enough. Link buried in a forum thread that promised the most exclusive chatroom you'll ever enter. Curiosity got the better of me. Première cliqued. And then the messages began appearing before anyone else could type them. Names I didn't recognize flickered across the screen. And the text wasn't just eerie, it felt personal. There were references to things I hadn't shared online. Moments from my life that no one could possibly know. The kind of detail that makes your stomach twist. I tried to look away, to close the browser, to convince myself it was some elaborate prank. My room was still safe, still normal, so I kept telling myself. The glow from the monitor, however, painted the walls with a strange reddish hue, stretching shadows that seemed to twitch when I blinked. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But I couldn't. There was something in that chatroom calling me, whispering secrets I wasn't supposed to know yet. And I felt, unmistakably, that it was watching. Watching? I don't mean the digital sense of being online, no. It was deeper than that. As if the darkness of the chatroom had seeped into my room, lacing the air around me with its intent. Every notification, every blinking cursor was a heartbeat, reminding me that whatever I had stumbled upon wasn't meant for me. I wanted to close the laptop, to return to my normal life, to forget this ever happened, but there was a pull, subtle and insidious, a forbidden knowledge waiting just beyond the next message. And for some reason, I couldn't stop myself from reading. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. My safe little room, now a cage of anticipation and dread, knowing that crossing this line would change everything. And yet, I knew I had to tell the story because if I didn't, no one would believe what happened next. I've always been the type to dig a little too deep. Not in life, not in school, not with people, but online. The internet has always been this endless labyrinth of corners you're not supposed to enter, threads that vanish when you blink, and forums where people whisper secrets that make you question reality. Most of it is harmless curiosity. Just me chasing stories or testing the limits of what I can find. But sometimes curiosity crosses into danger. And I suppose that night was one of those times. My life was otherwise ordinary. I went to college, had a couple of friends I kept mostly online, and spent my evenings scrolling through the usual forums and subreddits. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing that would explain why a single link would send me spiraling into something I couldn't escape. I was careful, or at least I thought I was. I had my rules. Never click on suspicious emails. Never download strange files. Never linger too long in corners of the internet that smelled wrong. But rules, as it turns out, are only as strong as your curiosity. I remember my friends warning me about going too far. Don't touch the deep web. One of them said with a half laugh, half serious tone. Some of the stuff there isn't meant for normal people. I nodded and smiled, but secretly, those warnings only made it more enticing. The forbiddance always is. And I had seen the threads, though. I'd seen them. People claiming to have stumbled onto chatrooms, where the boundaries between digital and real life blurred. Places where whispers could reach through the screen. Others said it wasn't just a chatroom, that there were forces or entities hiding in plain text, waiting for attention, waiting for you to make a mistake. I laughed those off when I first read them, dismissing them as urban legend or elaborate trolling. But the seed was planted. Day to day, nothing prepared me for what came next. My dorm room was small, cluttered with textbooks and half-empty coffee cups. The smell of late-night ramen lingering. My computer hums quietly in the corner, a comforting white noise that usually helped me zone into research or gaming. On the outside, everything seemed normal. My window cracked open to let in the spring air. Neighbors chatting in the hallways. The hum of fluorescent lights. The contrast between that normalcy and the darkness I was about to encounter couldn't have been starker. Even in my previous experiences with the dark web, I had never felt a presence. I had downloaded strange files, read unspeakable stories, even wandered into forums most people would think were abandoned. Nothing had reacted to me before, at least. Nothing that seemed sentient. And yet, somewhere along the way, I had learned to recognize the signs. The subtle dissonance in the text, the odd syntax that felt almost intentionnel, a pattern that whispered, "You're being watched." I had chalked those moments up to paranoia, or maybe the way my mind tried to make sense of randomness. Tadnai! I clicked a thread that had been buried deep, in a forum I'd never noticed before. The thread was unassuming, almost forgettable. But the title alone caught me, "The Chatroom That Watches You." People posted cryptic comments, some claiming to have left and never returned. Others hinting at secrets too dangerous to explain in public. I scrolled quickly, my heart picking up pace. There was a link at the bottom, small, and almost hidden in grey text. Something in me told me to stop, to close the tab, to go back to the ordinary safety of my mundane internet routine. But the pull was irresistible. I paused for a moment, letting the cursor hover over the link. Others had said it wasn't just a chat room, that it operated differently, that once you entered, the rules of reality bent in ways you couldn't predict. I didn't believe them, not really, and yet, I had the nagging sense that clicking would change everything, that I would see something I could never unsee. And so, after a breath that felt heavier than air, I clicked. The link was subtle, almost embarrassed in its placement at the bottom of the thread. It was grey, barely noticeable against the dark background. And the text read simply, "Enter if you dare." My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment longer than it should have. Every rational thought told me to stop, to close the tab, to let my curiosity die safely. But something inside me, the part that had chased stories down dead-end rabbit holes for years, urged me forward. I clicked. The screen flickered once, twice, and then settled into something that made my chest tighten. The chat room loaded slowly, the darkness of its interface bleeding into my vision. There was no bright white background, no cheerful colours, just an endless black void, punctuated only by pale grey text and subtle, almost imperceptible red accents. For one stand, it was a gedsline, like it had been crafted to look normal, but just off enough to unsettle you without realising why. At first glance, it seemed normal enough. A text box blinked at the bottom, and messages were already scrolling, sparse and slow. Usernames flashed briefly. Strange combinations of letters and symbols that didn't make sense. Some were familiar reused handles from forums I'd seen before, but others were clearly made up on the spot. My curiosity spiked. I wasn't supposed to be here. Every part of me knew that, yet every click of the scroll wheel, every glance at the screen felt irresistible. The first messages I read were banal. Greetings, small talk. Emojis that seemed oddly cheerful in the oppressive darkness of the interface. But beneath the casual surface, there was something off. The messages occasionally referenced things only I would know. I froze as I read one. "Hey, nice dorm setup. Are you drinking ramen again? Première blinked." That wasn't shared anywhere. No forum post, no image, no casual conversation. My stomach churned, but I typed anyway, nervously. Hi, who's this?" The reply came almost instantly. "You know who we are." A cold shiver ran down my spine. It was impossible. Of course someone had to have hacked my account, or my camera, or something. But a part of me realised I didn't want to think rationally. I wanted to keep reading. The usernames scrolled past. Some cryptic, some taunting, like shadows dancing just beyond the edge of vision. I tried to interact casually, asking questions about the chatroom itself. Most responses were nonsensical, cryptic hints. Every visitor leaves a mark. The room sees what you don't. Do you feel it yet? It was subtle at first, like an itch at the back of my mind. A sense that I was trespassing somewhere sacred or cursed. Every click, every message sent, Every keystroke felt like a step deeper into something I wasn't meant to find. My pulse accelerated, a mixture of thrill and terror. I had opened a door, and even if I wanted to step back, the threshold was already behind me. The interface itself contributed to the unease. The dark grey lines that divided user. Messages seemed to warp when I scrolled too quickly. Small images appeared briefly, blurred and impossible to focus on, like ghosts passing behind a veil. Occasionally. A username would blink at me once. It seemed to freeze directly on mine, then vanish. It was unnerving, but I couldn't look away. The dialogue became stranger the longer I stayed. Other users typed in riddles, fragments of sentences that suggested surveillance, hidden rules, and consequences for the uninitiated. A new user joined, their name simply Watcher. The first message I saw from them made me pause for an uncomfortably long time. We've been waiting. I leaned back in my chair, trying to rationalize it as coincidence, a glitch. Some elaborate trick, but my rational mind was already on the defensive. Every instinct screamed at me that this chatroom was alive in a way no forum, no website, no game had ever been. It responded to me, anticipated me, and even now, I could feel the invisible weight of its attention. I scrolled again, hesitating on every message, caught in the delicate balance between fascination and fear. The ordinary world of my dorm, my textbooks, my roommate's occasional laughter in the hallway felt impossibly distant. The screen was all there was, and whatever was behind it was waiting patiently, deliberately. Every new message felt like trespassing, and yet I pressed on, unable to turn back, unaware that the first truly strange occurrence was only moments away. I was scrolling through the chat room, trying to convince myself it was just a weird forum, that my mind was exaggerating, that there was a rational explanation for everything. Then it happened. A message appeared in the text box before anyone had typed it. I froze, eyes locked on the screen. Breath caught somewhere between panic and disbelief. The cursor blinked, and the words. They were mine. You shouldn't be here. My hand jerked back instinctively. I hadn't typed that. My keyboard hadn't even registered a press. I blinked at the screen, willing the words to vanish, hoping for some logical explanation, a glitch, a prank, anything. But there they remained, stark against the dark interface, accusing me silently. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I shouldn't be here. I knew it. I wished I hadn't clicked. I typed a shaky response. Who? Who sent that? Almost instantly, another user replied. We've been waiting for you. Première staredatite, cold cuff my neck. My rational mind scrambled. Maybe someone had hijacked the chatroom. Maybe it was some elaborate bot program to mimic messages. I tried to convince myself it was code, nothing more. But deep down, I knew I could feel it in the weight behind every word. In the way the screen seemed to pulse like it had a heartbeat. The usernames flickered again, some dissolving into symbols I couldn't read, others repeating in patterns that made no sense. One of them caught my eye, never left. I didn't think about it at first, but then the implications hit me. The forums I had scrolled past the warning threads. The vanished users, they weren't exaggerating. Some people entered this chatroom and never came back. My stomach churned, but I couldn't look away. I was already too deep. A blurred image appeared in the corner of the screen, statusy and indistinct. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. But the more I stared, the more it twisted, almost like it was alive, shifting just at the edges of perception. My hands trembled as I typed a desperate question. What do you want from me? The response was immediate. Attention. Always attention. You see too much, but not enough. I sat back, shaking my head, telling myself it was a joke. A script, a hallucination induced by too much screen time. And yet, every instinct screamed that there was a presence behind the words. A consciousness, maybe more than one, watching me, testing me. My room, once safe, felt like a cage. Shadows clung to corners. And the glow of the monitor made familiar objects warp into unfamiliar shapes. Even the hum of the computer sounded. Vronk, low and reverberating as though it was speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I tried to log off, to close the tab, but the browser froze. Panic welled up inside me. Not in any order I could follow. One line appeared, longer than the rest, scrolling slowly, deliberately. If you leave now, you may escape the room. My hands hovered uselessly over the keyboard. I wanted to scream, to wake someone, to escape the glow that seemed to burn into my eyes. Rational thought slipped further with every word. I tried to close the laptop again. Nothing. My dorm. Once mundane and ordinary, had become secondary irrelevant. The only reality was this interface, this digital darkness. And whatever waited beyond the blinking cursor. Another username popped up. Watcher 02 is its first message to explore. Curiosity is a dangerous friend. I typed, my fingers numb. Please. What is this? The answer came as a half-second delay. Almost teasingly slow, some fine knowledge. Some are consumed by it. Which will you be? A cold dread settled into my chest. Realized then that the warnings weren't exaggeration. The disappearances, the vanished accounts. The warnings from people who claimed to have escaped were all real or, at least, real enough to touch me. And yet, despite the fear clawing at every nerve, I felt an impossible pull deeper into the chat room. It was like staring into a dark river that promised answers no one else could provide. Even if those answers came at a cost I didn't yet understand. Images continued to flash faces, distorted and unrecognizable, fading into the blackness like smoke. My pulse quickened. I felt my heart hammering in my throat. But I couldn't stop scrolling. I couldn't stop reading. Tremble. Each cryptic username called to me, whispering secrets I was forbidden to know, taunting me with knowledge that only existed beyond the threshold of safety. I sat there, frozen yet compelled, fingers twitching above the keys. I knew something had claimed my attention, something that had been waiting for a visitor like me. And as I stared at the blinking cursor, I realized the terrifying truth. I had already crossed the line. Whatever was watching, whatever had been waiting, had acknowledged me. I wasn't just a visitor. Premier ou après. And I was only getting started. I should have left. I really should have. But by the time the first traces of terror had fully sunk in, the pull was already irresistible. There were sub-channels, hidden rooms, private messages tucked behind layers of the interface I didn't even know existed. Each one promised a glimpse of something new, something forbidden. And I clicked, one after another, as though my own curiosity had become a drug I couldn't quit. At first, I tried to rationalize it with dark humor. Okay, I told myself, leaning back in my chair. Maybe this is just some elaborate joke. Some bored hacker playing a game. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling. But my eyes stayed glued to the screen. Seemed to have been tailored specifically for me. As though the chatroom knew exactly what would draw me deeper. I laughed once, nervously, at how ridiculous it all seemed. And then a message popped up. You laughed. That's curious. I froze, not from fear, part of it but from that uncanny awareness that somehow, somewhere, this entity or entities were paying attention to the subtle movements of my own emotions. My jokes, my hesitations, even my attempts at mockery were recorded, analyzed, and reflected back at me with an almost sentient precision. I ventured into a private sub-channel labeled simply Observations. Here, messages weren't typed by anyone I could recognize. They were more like reports, cryptic and unnerving. One line, scrolling slowly across the dark screen, caught my eye. Sleeps 3 hours. Drinks too much coffee. Watches cartoons alone. Every word was correct. Every mundane detail of my life had been catalogued with precise attention. I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself that it was coincidence. Some clever social engineering. My cynicism crumbled with each line, replaced by a gnawing realization. Whatever this was, it knew me. Knew everything I wasn't supposed to share. I clicked on another sub-channel. one filled with blurred images that looked like faces. Not quite human, shifting and warping if I stared too long. I joked aloud to myself, yeah, totally normal. Totally sane. The joke fell flat immediately. I wasn't laughing anymore. Not really. Every interaction reinforced an unspoken set of rules. Rules I didn't fully understand but felt compelled to follow. Messages appeared with a rhythm, almost like commands. Check this file. Reply to that post. Scroll faster here. Linger there. Every compliance felt like a test. Every hesitation felt like an offense. The boundaries between digital and physical reality were dissolving. My dorm, my room, my bed, everything that had once signaled safety felt tenuous. I began receiving private messages referencing events from earlier in the day that I hadn't shared anywhere. So you leave your dorm at 3:12 p.m. You dropped your notebook. You hesitated by the vending machine. Remember? Panic collided with fascination. The level of detail was impossible. The small cracks in my reality widened. I found myself typing back cautiously, questioning the rules, testing the limits. And every answer was cryptic, designed to keep me tethered to the chat room, unable to pull away. Some of the subchannels contained recordings low quality, grainy videos that hinted at the physical world intersecting with the digital. One file showed a dark hallway that looked eerily like my dorm. Another displayed my desk from the angle of my chair. The same notebook I'd just been reading clearly visible. I stared at it, horrified, but clicked on the next link. How could I not? Each discovery pulled me further down a rabbit hole I didn't want to end. I noticed patterns emerging. Names repeated with small variations. Cryptic symbols hovered at the edges of messages. Almost imperceptible until I focused. Some of the images seemed to react to my cursor movements. I joked to myself, darkly, okay, clearly I'm losing it. But the joke felt like a dare. The chat room seemed to hear, to sense the skepticism, the rationality I was desperately clinging to. And it adapted, becoming more insistent, more invasive. Time became meaningless. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. My hands shook from coffee and adrenaline, my eyes strained from the glow. Yet, I kept clicking, scrolling, responding. Every moment held a hint of something deeper, something more forbidden. Every file, every message, every blurred image whispered secrets I wasn't supposed to know. A language half digital, half psychological, designed to ensnare me completely. I couldn't help myself. Each new revelation was addictive. The pull of forbidden knowledge was intoxicating, dangerous, and overwhelming. I kept thinking about the warnings, the vanished users, the people who never left. And yet, the fear coexisted with a deeper desire to see it all, to uncover every secret hidden in those channels, to confront whatever intelligence or consciousness was behind the screen. By the time I noticed my own reflection in the monitor pale, wide-eyed, trembling, I realized the contrast was stark. The ordinary, safe person I had been hours ago had vanished. In their place was someone who couldn't leave, who was tethered to the chat room by obsession and terror alike. And I knew, with every fibre of my being, that the descent was only beginning. The chat room wasn't just a digital space anymore. It was a predator, alive in a way I couldn't comprehend. En premier ou après. By the time the sound started, I had stopped checking the clock. Time felt elastic, stretching and snapping in ways my brain couldn't follow. It began with a soft clicking noise, rhythmic and deliberate, like someone tapping a fingernail against glass. I assumed it was my laptop fan, hors the radiator, until it matched the cadence of my breathing in click, out, click. I froze. A message appeared in the chat. You hear it too, don't you? My throat tightened. I hadn't typed anything. I hadn't even moved. I stared at the screen, heart racing, while more messages stacked beneath it. It's closer now. Don't turn around. You already did once. I laughed, a thin, brittle sound meant to convince myself this was still a game. Okay, I muttered, very funny. My voice sounded too loud in the room, swallowed immediately by the hum of my computer. The clicking stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then my screen flickered. Not the usual flicker, this was violent, stuttering, as if the image itself was trying to tear free. For a split second, the chatroom vanished and I saw my own face staring back at me. Palanduaidid, from an angle, wasn't possible. The image snapped back before I could scream. A new message appeared. You shouldn't have looked. My hands shook as I typed. What do you want? The respawn from a usually hadn't seen before, we understand. Another sound joined the room, soft and wet, like fabric dragging across carpet. I stood up so fast my chair skidded backward. The noise didn't stop. It came from behind me. I didn't turn around. Instead, I stared at the chat, desperate for it to make sense. Messages poured in, overlapping, some too fast to read. Names I recognized from earlier appeared again, never left. What she's I'd never seen before, all speaking in fragments. You're late. You missed it. We told you not to look. My breathing became shallow. I typed, "Where are you?" and instantly regretted it. The reply was calm. "Where you are." The screen flickered again, and for a heartbeat. The chat window was replaced by a live feed. My room, my bed, my door. The angle was wrong, too low, like it was being filmed from the floor. I could see my own legs, frozen in place. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping, and the feed shifted with me. I shouldn't show you this. A message appeared, but you need to see it. The feed split into multiple windows. Hallways I recognized. The stairwell outside my floor. The vending machine downstairs. Each camera angle followed a path, all moving toward my room. My chest tightened as I realized they were converging. I backed away until I hit the wall. My pulse roared in my ears. "Stop," I have whispered. "Please?" The response came gently. "You came to us." The clicking returned, louder now, layered with a faint scraping sound. I could feel it in my teeth. My screen dimmed, then brightened, displaying a single line of text. "Do you remember the warnings?" I did. Every post. Et very rumeur. Every comment that said people never really left. That some stayed behind, folded into the system itself. A new window opened without my input. It showed a chat log, labeled with my username timestamps stretching back years. Messages I didn't remember sending. Questions I never asked. Fears I'd never admitted. I felt exposed, flayed open. "Stop reading," I whispered to myself, but my eyes kept moving. The chat spoke again. There is no outside anymore. The room felt smaller, the walls inching closer. My phone buzzed on the desk. A notification from an unknown number displayed a single word. "Look!" I raised my eyes to the darkened screen just as it refreshed. And that's when I realized the chatroom wasn't showing me my reflection anymore. It was showing me what was standing behind me. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs refused to move. The air felt thick, pressurized, like the moment before a storm breaks. I could sense something breathing behind me, slow and patient, savoring the fear. The chat window pulsed softly, as if encouraging me to turn around, to confirm what I already knew. My reflection was gone, replaced by that presence. And yet the room felt fuller than ever. Messages flooded in faster now, overlapping, arguing, pleading. "Don't look. It wants you to see. Once you do, it knows you." My heart hammered so hard I thought it might tear itself free. I wanted to scream, to wake someone, anyone, but my throat locked around the sound. A new link appeared, glowing faintly. It was labeled simply, "Final log." My cursor drifted toward it without my consent. I told myself this was the moment to stop, to pull the plug, to run. But curiosity tightened its grip, colder and stronger than fear. I clicked. The screen went black. For a breathless second, nothing happened. Then white text appeared, slow and deliberate. Connection established. I felt something shift, deep and irreversible. Like a door slamming shut somewhere inside me. That was when I understood the truth. This wasn't a chatroom you visited. It was a threshold, a filter, a way of finding people like me. People who looked too long. People who listened. People who crossed the line. Behind me, Something exhaled. I didn't dare turn around. The silence pressed against my ears, thick and waiting. I understood then that this moment was only the beginning, not the end. Whatever had found me wasn't finished. It had plans, patience, and time. And now that it knew I could hear it, it would never stop calling. It was already inside my life, rewriting it, one quiet, deliberate second at a time, for Vincent. The room felt alive. Every shadow shifted, every corner stretched beyond what logic allowed. My laptop glowed faintly, its light crawling across the walls, illuminating shapes that shouldn't exist. I realized then that it wasn't just the screen watching me. Anymore, it was the space around me. The air itself seemed to hum, heavy and expectant, vibrating in rhythm with my heartbeat. A new message appeared. I hadn't typed anything. Do you know why you're here? Aswad mitro adri. I just clicked a link, I stammered. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I wanted to close the laptop, turn away, run, but some invisible tether kept me rooted. Curiosity brought you. The chat replied, slow, deliberate. And curiosity always demands a price. A soft scraping echoed from the corner of my room. Something shifted there. Impossible to define a silhouette, almost human, yet wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. My pulse spiked. My rational mind screamed it was a trick of shadows. An illusion, but every instinct told me it was real. The chat reacted instantly. You see it. Good. I tried to speak, but my voice caught. What? What are you? We are what you allowed. We are attention, curiosity, and hesitation made flesh. We are the watchers and the watched. The words reverberated in my skull. I could almost feel them pressing against my thoughts, probing, exploring, as if reading my fear and fascination together. Another message appeared, this one addressed specifically to me. We know you better than yourself. We know what you hide, what you ignore, what you crave. And now you are ours. The silhouette in the corner shifted closer. The room dimmed further, shadows stretching toward me like liquid. I tried to move, but my legs felt leaden. Every attempt to pull back was sluggish, as if the very air resisted. My hands shook as I typed. Desperate. Why me? Why no? Because you were ready. Because you wanted to see. Because some doors cannot remain closed. I realized then that it wasn't just observing. It was interacting, responding, anticipating. The chat, the shadows, the silence, they were all extensions of the same consciousness. One moment, the laptop displayed a cryptic file, seemingly innocuous. The next, it was live footage of my own desk. My notebook, my hands trembling above the keyboard. Every movement mirrored back at me, distorted, amplified. I blinked, and the corner darkened further. Shapes emerged, faces, half-formed, writhing, almost sentient, just beyond clarity. Their expressions weren't human. They were grotesque parodies of my own. Mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide in frozen terror. The chat typed in tandem. They were like you once. They thought they could leave. Do not make the same mistake. I tried to shut everything down. Pull the plug, destroy the laptop. Each attempt failed. Power surged. Cables sparked. Screens flickered violently, but the chat persisted. My hands bled slightly where I had scraped them against the keyboard in panic. Still, messages appeared. Pain is temporary. Knowledge lasts. My breathing came in shallow bursts. Every instinct urged me to run, to escape, to reclaim the mundane safety of my dorm. But I couldn't. The tether, attention, curiosity, whatever you want to call it, kept me anchored. I felt myself being drawn deeper, compelled to see, compelled to understand, compelled to witness things no one should ever know. A whisper grazed the edge of perception. Almost human, almost playful. Look closer. I hesitated, aware that doing so might seal my fate. Against better judgment, I leaned in. The screen transformed. Files, messages, and images cascaded like waterfalls, revealing connections I could barely process. Vanished users, Impossible coincidences. Threads that twisted through years and lives, linking them all in a web of observation and control. I understood then that the chatroom was not an isolated phenomenon. It was part of something larger, something systematic, something that had always been there, always watching, always claiming attention. Do you understand now? The chat asked. I swallowed hard, every nerve alive. I think I do. Good, but understanding is only the beginning. The silhouette stepped closer, impossibly fluid, folding the space around it. The hum in the room deepened. I could feel its presence inside my chest, inside my thoughts, shaping them subtly, bending my fear into fascination. Every boundary I thought I had between reality and this world dissolved further. Some never leave. The chat continued. Some stay as part of the network, woven into its rules, its eyes, its whispers. I realized with a cold certainty that those warnings the forum posts, the vanished users, the stories laughed at Weiraltru. And now I was on the cusp of joining them. Not fully, not yet, but tethered irrevocably. I tried to turn away, to shut the laptop, to run, to scream. The air pressed in, slowing my movements, thickening around me like syrup. The chat displayed my reflection again. Butaltered. Pale, strained, wide-eyed. Almost inhuman. The corners of my room shimmered, and I could sense other presences lurking just beyond sight. Patient, curious, waiting. Do you see it? One message asked. I nodded mutely, even though the entity couldn't see me. My rational mind had no control. Terror and understanding blended into a single, cold clarity. I had glimpsed a truth no one should ever confront. Something older, more patient, more aware than I could ever imagine. I had learned things that could not be unlearned. I still feel it sometimes. Not always, not constantly, but in moments when the room is quiet and the screen glows faintly. I sense a presence at the edge of perception. A cursor flicks without input. A notification appears from a number I don't recognize. The whispers of usernames long gone scroll past in memory. And I think, just for a heartbeat, that it's still watching me. You probably think I'm exaggerating. I've been told that before by friends, by strangers online, by forum lurkers who claim they've seen the same things and survived to talk about it. But the proof isn't in the words I type. It's in the subtle insistence of reality bending around me. The hum of the laptop. I've considered posting about it online, sharing screenshots, asking for help. Some of you will have recognized patterns, have read similar threads, have even left comments on past stories saying, I've been there too. I read those, and sometimes I reply with vague encouragement. Other times I just watch. Participation feels dangerous. Attention is currency here, and I've learned my lesson. Still, I can't stop wondering if someone out there is, about to make the same mistake I did. So, what happens next? Honestly, I don't know. I've stopped clicking links that appear in obscure threads. I don't linger in certain forums. I don't respond to messages from unfamiliar usernames. I try to live in a world that seems normal again, but the knowledge lingers. It colors every online corner I visit, every forum I scroll through, every late-night chat I might peek at. And I wonder, constantly, how many others are out there? How many have crossed the line? How many are waiting to be drawn in next? I want to hear from you. Comment your theories, share your experiences. Even vote on what story you want to see next. If you think, premier ou antokno. The community has always been a strange mixture of curious and terrified. And that's exactly how it should be. Keep the speculation alive. Keep your attention sharp. The line between observer and observed is thinner than you think. En finale, rumthis. Curiosity can save you. Curiosity can destroy you. The screen may look innocuous. The forum may seem normal. The username may seem like a joke, but some doors, once opened, can never truly close. Still check jus à little, just to make sure nothing has slipped through the cracks. I shouldn't do it, and maybe that's exactly why I do. Sobe careful. If you stumble onto something buried, something subtle, Something that hums with a life of its own. Think twice before you click. But some part of that room, that chat, that intelligence, it never really leaves. It watches, always, and if you're reading this, maybe it's watching you too. Sleep with the lights on tonight. And if you see a cursor moving on its own, don't turn around.